Okay, so we're gonna do a list, or tier list, of the most influential rock guitarists. I'm not gonna pick anyone who's super current. We're just gonna go back with the people that are from like the 40s, 50s onward to like maybe like the 80s, 90s ish. Um, so this is just my opinion. You gotta remember that. So let's just get right into it, right? So I'm gonna start with the D tier, and I'm gonna put Kerry King in D tier. I think Kerry King's a pretty good player. I think Kerry King wasn't as influential as some of the other guys in the big four, the thrash metal bands. Just to be frank, I do think he inspired plenty of like death metal bands and stuff like that. I think that holds true. But I think as far as inspiring a lot of musicians throughout like the rock genre, I don't I don't think he had a big enough influence to warrant anything above a D. Just my personal opinion. And I think he's the only one that I'm going to put into D tier. Now we're going to go to C tier. I'm actually going to go ahead and put Yngwie Malmsteen into C tier. And he was very influential after he got out of Alcatraz, or maybe even during his time in Alcatraz. Very fast neoclassical player, loves the diminished scale. Great player. But again, I think he really only appealed to the virtuosos. I think he appealed to people who, I guess, they put an emphasis or like this importance on speed rather than anything else. I mean, speed and technique, and those are great things. There's nothing wrong with that. I don't think he had a major influence on any other spectrum of the guitar players. I think he was influential to a lot of virtuoso type guitar players. I think anyone who's a virtuoso lover, like who loves people like Steve Vai, Joe Satriani, like Tosin Abasi, they are gonna probably know who Malmsteen is, and they're gonna probably, if they enjoy those other guys, they're probably gonna enjoy Malmsteen as well, listening wise. And those guys probably all have some influence of some sort. Not all of them, because they, Satch and Vi were around the same era, but and they might even have some influence by them, but by him. But yeah, I'm gonna put him in C tier. I just don't think that he influenced, much like Kerry King. I don't think he influenced a wide enough range. So we're gonna get in B tier here, and let's go ahead and put. Um, who's the first B tier guy? All right, let's go ahead and put Marty Friedman in B tier. Marty Friedman's a fantastic guitar player, especially in his time in Megadeth. I mean, they recorded their magnum opus, which was Rust in Peace, with Marty Friedman. He's a brilliant guitar. Just a brilliant guitar player. His time with Jason Becker and Cacophony, all that. The guy is incredible. I just feel like out of the big four, there was other more influential players, which we'll get into. I think the guy is just great. I think most people who know who he is think that he's super talented, and he is. And I think he influenced a lot of players. Certainly more players than Malmsteen or Kerry King, but probably not more players than someone like maybe Hetfield or Hendrix. So let's see. Moving on. Eric Clapton. We'll put Eric Clapton in B tier. I think he did plenty for blues rock guitar. But I think I don't know, he's kind of like Malmsteen. They both have a bit of an ego, although I think Clapton's more humble than Malmsteen. But you look at most of these guitar players, and there's a lot of humility amongst them. I think Clapton has a little bit less. That doesn't, don't get me wrong, that doesn't change where he would be on the list. I just think that, like, people like Eric Johnson are better players. And this is not a better, like, who's the best player. This is who's the most influential. I think that, things like with Layla and his time in Cream and the Yardbirds, really important stuff. I don't know. I mean, I don't think he was as important as people like Angus Young, for instance. He was very important. Don't get me wrong. Um, that's why he's in the middle of the road. I think that he influenced a really wide range of people, but maybe not the maximum number of people. I don't think he made a big, huge impact. I think he probably inspired people like John Mayer and the like, but I don't, I don't know. I don't really keep up with John Mayer. Another one that goes in the B tier, I think Randy Rhoads. Um, I don't think we just had enough time with Randy Rhoads to see exactly his full effect. I think he was amazing. I think his time with Ozzy was awesome. I think it was Quiet Riot on Sunset Strip when he were playing, alongside, maybe not directly alongside, but around the same time that Van Halen was playing on the Sunset Strip. It was pretty cool. And the guy was super talented, and he made some amazing solos. Mr. Crowley is just a fantastic solo. It's one of the best Ozzy solos that there is out of all of Ozzy solos. That's with anybody he's worked with. But I think he just died way too young, and he didn't get to show enough of his stuff. I mean, one can argue that someone only needs to make one album, and they could be massively influential. I think that's true, but I don't think I don't think when Blizzard of Oz came out, for instance, I don't think everyone was immediately trying to copy that sound. Um, so he definitely influenced plenty of guitar players. I think, again, more than Kerry King, more than Malmsteen. But I don't think he inspired more than some of these other guys. Moving on. Let's see. Let's put Steve Vai in B. I love Steve Vai. He's actually one of my favorite guitar players. He's probably the guy who made me want to improve the most at guitar. But I don't know that he's as influential as his peer, Joe Satriani. I don't think that he's quite at that level. Although I think that they're both equally skilled, and I think they're both magnificent players. Super talented, and I think they're both really smooth. They have a really smooth style. A little quirky, but that's great. That's fine. I just think that he hasn't reached quite as many people as someone like Joe Satriani has. That's just a personal opinion of mine. And I think I'm also trying to temper my bias a little bit too, because I'm a huge fan of his. I like For the Love of God, is just amazing, and Lotus Feet are two of my favorite instrumental songs of all time. So I'm gonna put him here. And let's see who else. Let's see. Let's put Kirk Hammett in B tier as well. I think some people might make an argument he belongs in A tier, but I don't think so. If I was to say which of the two guitar players out of Metallica were more influential, I would definitely say James Hetfield is a more influential guitar player. Not to take anything away from Kirk Hammett. Kirk Hammett is really pretty influential guitar player. I think for leads and stuff like that, a lot of lead guitar players, especially in the thrash metal scene, probably wanted to really emulate Kirk Hammett. And so he definitely deserves a spot at least at the B tier. But I don't think he's more influential than someone like Kirk Hammett. I think James Hetfield. I think James Hetfield is a more influential player. And then do I want to put anyone else into this tier? Gosh. I think we'll put... we'll come back to it, just to be sure. Let's put, right away, Angus Young, A tier. I don't think he was the best out of the guitar players I've been mentioning so far. I think he's definitely responsible for lots and lots of people picking up the guitar. AC/DC was a huge deal. I think a lot of kids who go through their rock phase, especially when they're going through their 70s, 80s phase, goes through an AC/DC phase. Me and my friends all did, and a lot of people that I know you know, do. There's nothing wrong with that. I really like a lot about what he brings to the table, but at the same time, I don't think he's the best. I think he's good, but I do think that they brought the right energy. He was in a great band, and everyone wanted to sound like Angus Young on, you know, Highway to Hell and stuff like that. He's a great player, you know. So moving on from AC/DC, let's go to let's go to Chuck Berry. Chuck Berry. Um, what is there to say about Chuck Berry? I think he kind of made the guitar a big deal in rock music. I think the guy deserves a lot of credit. I think a lot of people could probably argue for him being an S tier. I don't know enough about Chuck Berry to comfortably say I would put him in S tier in my opinion. I think he did a hell of a lot for music, probably just in general, especially guitar. But and that's why he gets A tier. But I don't really think I know enough about him to assess him any higher. But I definitely would never. I wouldn't dare to put him any lower though. Let's go ahead and move on to Satch. Oh yeah, so Joe Satriani, A tier, easy. He inspired lots of virtuosos, inspired lots of people in bands. He's just got a super smooth, quirky style, much like Steve Vai. But I think he was he had more exposure. I think he had more exposure than Steve Vai, and that's just my opinion. I mean, the guy runs G3. Come on, you know, he's a pretty big deal. He's a really cool player. So I really like Satch. Not as much as I like Vi, but I do think he was a bigger influence on guitar players than Vi. So I'm gonna, we're gonna put him in A tier. The next guy I'm gonna put in A tier. Let's put James Hetfield. Like I said, I think he belongs up here in the A tier over Kirk Hammett. I think he's got a pretty visceral style. I think he's got the most impressive down picking technique of anybody probably I've ever heard. Anyways, maybe alive. I'm not sure. Metallica, he was like a very definitive for the sound of Metallica. Was they were, super big deal for tons of guitar players. I can't think of a guitar player who listens to metal who doesn't at least recognize how important Metallica was and how important James Hetfield and Kirk Hammett were. And everyone who plays metal or even plays like hard rock probably learns at least one Metallica song, like bare minimum. Master Puppets, or I guess if you're into that kind of thing, maybe like Enter Sandman. That's not like my jam. I think like their first 4 albums were great, and after that it's debatable. But when they were on Ride the Lightning, Master Puppets, and Justice for All, Kill 'Em All, just super awesome, visceral thrash. They were thrash, and Hetfield embodied that. But moving on to that is with his rival, I guess if you will, Dave Mustaine, and I think he deserves to be up here in A. Let's move him over here to keep that more uniform. In the same way that Hetfield brought that thrashiness, I think Dave Mustaine brought a complexity to it that inspired me a lot. Dave Mustaine was a huge inspiration to me personally, and if it was just based on my own personal inspiration, I would say Vi and Mustaine and Rhodes, probably Friedman would all be right at the top. But I think it's just in general we're talking about influential guitar players for this broad spectrum of things. I think he is a big deal. Obviously, he's probably a pretty big part of the architecture of Metallica's sound. So I think he definitely at least deserves to be sitting alongside Hetfield. I think he's a more talented guitar player, in just my personal opinion. I think he just has a more complex rhythm sections, and Rust in Peace is like, even without the solos, is like complex and super well written, and it's awesome. Megadeth was just a fantastic band. So I think he's an easy A. I think I'm gonna go ahead and put Brian May up here as well in A tier. Brian May was part of one of the best rock bands of all time, Queen. And I think his playing was really unique. And it really rubbed off on a lot of people. I think it rubbed off on a lot of rock guitar players. I think it rubbed off on a lot of progressive players, whether that's like progressive metal, progressive rock, whatever. I think his willingness to step outside of the box was a big deal. And what I mean by that is there's a lot of players I would consider that play inside of a box, almost. Not in a negative connotation, but just in my way of thinking about it. You know, I would say Angus Young is kind of like guilty of playing in a box to some degree. I would say Kirk Hammett's probably into some degree that way. And then Jimmy Page. But, you know, I think Brian May really steps like far outside of the box. And I think, you know, he reminds me of how Vi and Satch step out of the box. And I don't really know their influences, but I would be pretty shocked if they weren't at least somewhat influenced by Brian May's playing, because he's, I don't know, to me he's quirky, he's got the right amount of quirk, and it just makes him different. And that could have hurt him in his influence, but I think it just really helped him and just made people want to try something different, new. And I think that's really important. These guys were all like kind of trailblazers. Otherwise, they're not really influential. And I think he trailblazed in that kind of fashion, you know, being different with Queen. And then I think we're going to put one more guy in A tier. And it's debatable. I would love to put him in S tier, but I'm not convinced 100% that he needs to be up there. I want to put David Gilmour in S tier, but I think he needs to be in A tier. David Gilmour is part of what defined Pink Floyd, and in a lot of ways defined progressive music. And he just has just this right amount of control and resist, like this control and temperament, I guess you say, almost like this ability to tone back what he's doing. Self-control, restraint is the word I'm looking for. He's got restraint when he plays, and it's not restraint in some sort of like negative way. It's like a very tasteful type. And he could play a flurry of notes, but instead he chooses to make every single note a super, super important. Comfortably Numb is one of the best guitar solos that has ever been played. And he wrote it and he played it. It is incredible. Without Roger Waters singing in that song, his solo says enough. What else is there to say? I think he inspired lots and lots of people. I think he inspired bands like Tool and like players like Adam Jones. Lots of progressive players in general. Just a fantastic guitar player. Just a fantastic guitar player. And he had like this right mix of blues. I kind of would like to say I think Clapton's a good player. I think Gilmour had it though. I think he had it. He could evoke that emotion and just like really capture it in a bottle and convey it in such a great way. Now, let's put Jimmy Page up here in S tier. Was Jimmy Page the best player? No. Was he a good player? Yes. But he was responsible for plenty of people picking up a guitar and learning how to play the guitar. Stairway to Heaven, that's enough right there. That's it. Jimmy Page, just a great influence on rock music and metal. I don't know. The guy's S tier. There's not a whole lot to say about Jimmy Page, really. Jimi Hendrix, another, I think, no-brainer to go in the S tier. Influenced everybody like that. If you take away Chuck Berry and maybe I don't know. Maybe just Chuck Berry. I'm sure Jimi Hendrix has influenced everybody on this list to some degree. Um, he just I don't know, man. What can you say? What can you not? What can you say about? I mean, what can you say about Jimi Hendrix? He's a great guitar player. Um, everyone knows Jimi Hendrix playing when they hear it. And any of these guys, you can know who's playing when you hear it. They're all got like this unique idea behind their playing and this unique sound. And the last guy I'm gonna put up here is Eddie Van Halen. And Eddie Van Halen goes up here for a simple reason. This guy was the 80s. That's it. When he came out and he played on the 1978 album Van Halen, nobody had heard what he was doing at the time, and everybody wanted to do that. Motley Crue, Rat, I mean all the hair metal bands. I mean he defined the 80s sound, the brown sound, he defined that. And you're talking about a guy who inspired tons of people that were in the same exact era, and they wanted to do the exact same things that he was doing. They all wanted to be Eddie Van Halen. And when you have everyone wanting to be you and copying what you're doing to some degree, yeah, I think you deserve to be at the very top. I mean, the 80s was arguably one of the best times for guitar, and Eddie Van Halen has a really big hand in that, and there's no denying that. You can think he's overrated, and he may or may not be, but he is very integral to a lot of the virtuoso playing now. Steve Vai cites him as an influence. I'm sure Marty Friedman probably is influenced by him. Lots of metal guitar players in general are going to be influenced by him. I think some people will also raise the question, well, why you got Van Halen up here and Randy Rhoads down here? And I kind of already explained. I mean, Randy Rhoads died early, and I know there was some sort of I guess unspoken rivalry between the two of them. Both of them playing on the Sunset Strip and everything in Los Angeles. But I just don't think there's any denying that Van Halen is just responsible for more guitar players picking up the instrument and wanting to do exactly what he was doing. They wanted to play Eruption. I know I wanted to play Eruption, and everybody else thought you were so cool when you could in high school when you could play Eruption. But everyone wanted to play Eruption. They wanted to play the Beat It solo when he was working with Michael Jackson. What? There's no argument here in my eyes. He easily belongs in S tier. And if I had to pick, if I was forced to pick one artist, I would say probably Hendrix if he had to stand alone. But even then, I guess I'm such a product of listening to so much thrash and 80s metal and stuff like that Eddie Van Halen still is, in my eyes, probably as influential of a guitar player as Jimi Hendrix. Might be a little bit blasphemous. Hendrix probably influenced more people because he's got less of a leaning. I think Van Halen was leaning toward, it was metal, and I mean arguably, but Jimi Hendrix was a lot more open. You know what I'm saying? He's more just rock, blues-ish, funk. I mean, he was such a great mix of all of these things, and so he was so versatile. So that's why I would put him at the very top if I had to pick one. But this is my list. If you don't agree with it, that's perfectly fine. Let me know who you would change around, who you would add or take away, who you don't think deserves to be on this list at all, who you think I should have put on here, and where you think they should have been. Let me know what your thoughts are. I'm going to end up doing more of these types of videos, these tier lists. We'll do, in the future, really soon. We'll do maybe modern guitar players, maybe modern metal guitar players. I know there's probably a lot of metal guitarists on here, even though I said it's rock guitarists, but regardless. Maybe more modern guitar players, bands, and we'll do genres. I think you just put lump metal together, for instance, there's too many, and it just becomes too hard. So we'll do we'll do genres. So if you guys want to see band genres done next, or in the very near future, let me know what genre of metal, for instance, because I'm mostly a metal guy. What genre you want? You want like progressive metal, which is like kind of like my one of my favorites, but like you got metalcore, hardcore, I guess, deathcore, death metal. Um, I guess you could even throw grunge in there. I grew up to some degree with grunge. I guess you could throw new metal in, even though I'm not that versed in it. But I know a lot of those bands, so we could do lots of those things. But in the future, I want to do more guitar players, and maybe we'll do by skill next time. Maybe we'll bring more guys in. So that's what we're gonna do. So if you like the video, go ahead and give me a like. And if you like this format, and I got other stuff that I want to do too. I'm a guitar player myself, and I'll probably end up doing some guitar playing and some things of that nature on the channel. But regardless, if you like this type of content, if you'd like to subscribe, that'd be great, and you can follow me when I do upload these videos. So I will see you guys in the next one.